You don't know what you want to do. I don't know what I want to do. But we do know that this is what we want to know, you know? So today, let's talk about some things we can try to figure out what it is that we should be doing with our lives, with our careers, with that relationship that you're not sure has run its course. I wanted to be a comics artist. I wanted to write an important comic. I wanted to write an important story. I've been haunted by this idea for years. I wanted to be the next Bill Watterson, the guy who did Calvin and Hobbes. This is what I wanted to do, and that desire informed my decision making for many years. Now, keep this in mind because that's important for this whole rant. I wanted to draw. I wanted to tell stories through art, something that I haven't done for the past 6 years or so because I'm terrified of it. It's great. Now, eventually I jumped to music. I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be a guitarist. I wrote songs. I wrote about 30 songs by the time I was 25. Pretty proud of that, to be honest. And then eventually I wanted to be a game developer. And that turned into, well, I guess I should be a programmer. I'm going to start coding to see what happened. And all these things converged and clashed inside my head. What do I do, though? Who am I? What do I want to do? Who do I want to be? And when my job ended a year ago, I had the privilege, the opportunity to sit in my house and think about it. What is it that I want to do? If you know what you want to do, if you know what you're good at, if you know who you're trying to be, consider yourself lucky because that's half the battle. That's 90% of the battle. If you know where you're going, my theory is every step you take gets you closer to it. But when you're like me and you want 1,000 different things in 1,000 different directions, then that gets a little harder. I'm constantly confused, indecisive. A year after I left my job, I think I know what I want to do, but my brain doesn't fully commit to the bit. And all I can do is keep moving forward in hopes that that's the direction I'm supposed to be heading in. It's scary, but that's part of the fun. Comfort zones aren't very comfortable in the end. Like this channel, for example, is something that I try to do to answer that question for myself. I used to say I wish I could sit myself down and give myself a good talking to, and I think this is that. This is how I do that. And I get to have these conversations with you as well. Going back to my previous story about me wanting to be a comic book artist, I quit drawing it, and I quit drawing it for one specific reason. I wasn't seeing the numbers go up. People weren't reading my stuff, so I got discouraged. Nobody told me that you have to put out, listen to this, you have to put out 300 pieces of content. 300 to even start understanding what your voice is like, what your message is supposed to sound like. I can't remember where I read that, but it sounds right. So I was working on this comic project, and I couldn't get people to read it, and I quit. Because I didn't realize that everything before 300 comics or articles or hell, maybe even YouTube videos, everything before that is just training. It's just practice. When I started that comic, it was one-page gags with zero continuity. Then I rebooted that into a format of storylines, and I started working on that. And I wrote myself into a corner. And then I realized that nobody was reading it anyways. So I stopped. And I didn't know it would take 10 years till those characters matured in my head, till I finally understood who they really were, till I finally understood what their message was and why anyone should care about them. I started with a silly idea back in 2003, and I didn't know it would grow and they would have an actual voice inside my head. When I was setting up this YouTube channel, most tutorials said a similar thing. It takes you over a year to even begin to settle on what your voice is, to even understand who you are in front of a camera. So with all this context, how do we find what we want to do? How do we create? How do we plant that seed that might blossom in 10 years? You've heard the story about the two wolves, right? The story that goes that there are two wolves raging inside of you. One wolf is an angry, selfish, bitter, violent wolf. The other wolf is a peaceful, kind, calls his mom sort of wolf. So which one wins that raging battle? And the lesson of the story is it's the wolf you feed. And that's what I want you to think about. Which wolf are you feeding? And in this case, I'm not talking about morality or personal growth. I'm talking about what it is that you want to do. I have two wolves inside of me, and they're both very sleepy. But as I look back on my life, I think, what was I doing? Who was I feeding? I was drawing. I was learning how to draw. I was writing stories. I was learning how to structure a story to make it interesting. What am I? I'm a writer. I'm a storyteller. That's always been the wolf I've been feeding. You already know what you want to do, what you're supposed to do. There are things that you're good at, things you could turn into a job, a trade, a business, a hobby, even. Things that are intrinsically you. Your voice, like how to tell stories, how to be charming, how to deep dive into topics of interest. And right now you spend your day saying, I wish I was doing this instead, or I wish I had studied something different. And that's the wolf. That's what you want to do. That's how you know you're feeding a wolf. You're just not spending quality time with it. And by that I mean you can start looking up tutorials online, searching for classes nearby, pulling out your art supplies from storage and just doodling whatever. Because it's training. Your next step is not about doing the thing, it's about training on the thing. I was doing the right thing. I was working on my craft and creating characters and giving them a voice. I just didn't know that I was in training, so I second-guessed myself and I quit. I was feeding the right wolf, I just didn't know it. What I was doing wrong was not understanding the only thing that's going to help you get to where you want to go is consistency. Showing up, doing the work, being present day after day after day. And understanding that showing up right now, today, just means showing up to training. If you're not in the majors yet, you are watching this video right now because you want answers. You want to get better. You're already taking those first steps. So which wolf is it? What's being fed? And I don't want to hear that you're lazy, that the only thing that you like to do is play video games or whatever. Fine, sure, but why is that? Why do you like video games so much? Why do you like sports so much? Why do you like watching TV so much? Is there a way you can turn that into a job? Someone out there knows. Someone out there is doing it. How did they get there? Can you follow that roadmap? For the past few years, I made it my goal to become the person that I needed when I was growing up. That's what I decided to do. That's what I've been doing. That's the wolf I've been feeding. So when my life changed and I found myself hung out to dry, I could no longer ignore that wolf. Actually, I made the deliberate decision to spend more time with it. I've been trying to talk to people as a way of saying, hey, I find myself in the same hole as you are in. Let's find the exit together. How do you know what you want to be? Well, what have you been doing? What have you been wishing for? What did you quit because you thought you didn't have it in you? Because you do have it. The only thing that's lacking is consistency. And that can be learned. I wish somebody would have told me that when I was in my 20s. Because by the time I was 25, I already felt old. Like my life had already passed me by. And I quit my comics. And now I find myself at 46 saying, you know what? Even if I'm not very lucky, I still have the entire second half of my life left for me to do stuff. And for this second half, I actually have a frontal lobe. I didn't have that before. I grew it myself and everything. I mean, yeah, like my sciatica is killing me, but I'll live. I have my health. I have the incredible chance of using this time to do whatever it is that I want to do. And it feels fun. And I want to write a movie, and I want to write a novel, and I want to finish my graphic novel, and I want to release an EP. Which wolf are you feeding? You already know what you want to do. Just a quick reminder that my newsletter comes out every Friday with additional ideas and tips that you can try related to the video's topic. Just to drive it home. Link in the description. So after you've watched this video, I want you to think. I just want you to think, and I want you to think in two specific ways. First, what have I been doing? What have I been preparing for? What have I been training for? What have I been wishing I could do? That's one. And second, I want you to think about what the scariest thing to do would be, because sometimes our dreams, when abandoned, become walking nightmares. So the thing that you want to do, it's hidden in the closet waiting for you to reach for those acrylic paints so it can snag your hand. If you're terrified of it, guess what? That's probably the wolf you've been feeding, and it got big. So I want you to think about what you've already been doing. I have a friend who spends most days doing spreadsheets, planning her next move, planning her next job, planning what she needs to learn to get there. That's the wolf she feeds, and that's great that it works out perfectly for her. I have another friend who has kids and a full-time job, and she thinks about all the stories that she wants to tell and the time that she doesn't have. She knows what she wants to do. She just rejects the idea because it's hard and scary. But that means all she needs to do is have a proper roadmap. Baby steps. She knows the way out of that hole. And as it happens, I do have a video on roadmaps. Take a look at that next. It was one of my first videos, so it might be a little rough, but I stand by what I said. I said what I said. Keep an eye on those wolves.